All right, you guys, this lesson is going to be about non-renewable and renewable energy resources. So all of those different types of energy that we've been talking about and all of those resources of energy that we learned about the last couple of days, we can break them up into two categories. Either they're considered non-renewable or they are considered renewable. So what does that mean? We're going to start with non-renewable. Non-renewable resources are just any resource that cannot be remade or regrown as fast as we are using it. So a couple examples of these would be coal and nuclear power, which you can see in the pictures here. For these, coal takes thousands of years to form. Now, it will replenish itself eventually, but the problem is that we use coal in a matter of seconds. It takes thousands of years for it to form in the earth. So we're using it much, much, much faster than it could ever replenish itself, which makes it non-renewable. It cannot renew its stashes in the ground fast enough for us to be able to take advantage of that. And that's true of all non-renewable resources. So if we take a closer look at nuclear energy, nuclear fission is the process that we use to create nuclear energy, and that uses an element called uranium. And the reason why nuclear energy is not renewable is because once we use that uranium and we take advantage of the energy that's stored in it, the uranium is used up and we can't use it anymore. So again, we do not have uranium being replenished in the earth as fast as we're using it up. So that's going to run out eventually, meaning it's non-renewable. Couple other examples of non-renewable resources are coal, petroleum, and natural gas. Again, we use these up much faster than we could replenish them in the earth, or as fast as the earth could replenish them. Because these take so long to form, thousands and thousands of years, we call them fossil fuels because they're so old. So how is coal made? Well, it starts out about 300 million years ago, before the dinosaurs. We had all these plants growing on Earth, and a lot of them, after, just like plants do, they live for a while, then they die. Over millions of years, those plants were buried underneath dirt and sometimes water, and the plants get deeper and deeper and deeper, more dirt on top of them. And as they get deeper, the pressure builds and the temperature builds. And when you put all that pressure on the carbon material that was in the plants, it changes that carbon material into coal. But this takes a long, long time to happen. Oil and gas are similar, except that oil and gas happens where an ocean originally was. So here you have plants and animals that eventually are going to die. They'll sink to the bottom, and slowly over time they will get buried by sand and silt, and it will push them down deeper and deeper and deeper into the ground as more and more sand and silt build on top of them. And once they get down deep enough, again, that pressure and that heat will change the carbon matter into oil or or gas, depending on the conditions. So what was the difference between the coal and the gas and the oil? Well, the difference is that we're going to be able to find coal in places that are covered by land. And if we want to mine for gasoline or for natural gas, we're going to have to look in places where there once was an ocean, or where there still is an ocean, or a large body of water. All right. On the other hand, our second category is renewable resources. So these are resources that can replenish themselves in a really short period of time. So as we use them, we can replenish our supply just as fast as we're using it. In other words, they're not going to run out. Some examples of these would be solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, and biomass. And I'm going to break those down a little bit more for you. The first one being solar. This is energy directly from the sun. So we have solar panels that we can put out, and we learned in our last unit that these solar panels are actually energy conversion devices. So we take that light energy that comes from the sun, we absorb it into these panels, and the panel can then transfer that energy from light and change it into electrical energy. So then we use that energy instead of burning coal, which is a non-renewable resource for creating electricity. Why is this energy renewable? Well, every day the sun comes out, we get more energy. Just as fast as we use it up, we can restore it every day. Doesn't take millions of years to replenish it. It only takes the next day. You got the sun's energy coming in again, and you can use it immediately. Geothermal power is energy that we harness from the core of the earth. So if you've ever been out to see Old Faithful in South Dakota, this is a big geyser, and there's a park that has a whole bunch of geysers where, you know, depending on which geyser you're looking at, every couple hours or every couple days, really hot water will spray out because the pressure and the heat build up. Well, that heat that is building in the core of the earth, because the core of the earth is so warm, that is constantly being renewed in the core of the earth. So we can take advantage of that heat energy and use it to transform it into other types of energy at places where there's geysers, or a lot of times way deep down in the ocean there's vents that release that thermal energy, and we can gather it up and use it. Now again, it's renewable because the earth is continually replenishing its sources in its core. Wind energy is another form of renewable energy. So we have these huge wind turbines. You've probably seen them if you've driven through southern Minnesota. They have big fields where there's just hundreds and hundreds of these. And these huge pieces here where when the wind hits them, it's going to turn this turbine, and that creates mechanical energy. And we learned in our last unit that we then can convert that energy to electrical, send it down, and we can use that electrical energy for whatever we need it for. Again, this is renewable because anytime that there's wind, we have electricity. Whereas, you know, with the coal, again, that takes so long to replenish, we can have instant electricity the minute that the wind is blowing. This can create some problems. If you have a period of time in an area where it's not very windy, you might have to use some alternative sources for your electricity, not rely completely on the wind. Biomass is another form of renewable energy. And this is basically burning organic matter, like burning wood is the thing to think of when you think of biomass. This is renewable because it doesn't take that long to grow a tree compared to coal. Now, obviously, growing trees takes a lot longer than harnessing wind or harnessing the sun's energy, but it's still considered renewable because we can replant the trees that we cut down. We use another example of biomass energy is taking corn and making ethanol fuel for our cars from that. We can regrow corn pretty quickly as we use it up, much more quickly than we can for relying on gasoline that has been formed in the ground. Water or hydropower energy we get from water. So we also talked about this in our energy unit, where when you have a dam and you let the water run through it, it spins these big turbines, which is mechanical energy. We can then convert that mechanical energy into electrical energy and keep that going. And we will have that source renewed every time. As long as that water's flowing, we'll always have that source of energy. The limit to this one is that you really have to have water, so it's not very practical to try to rely on hydroelectric by itself, because there's lots of places, even in the United States itself, that do not have rivers where we could take advantage of this. So location is very important if you're thinking about using hydroelectric power. And as just a little closing note, here's a little graph that shows how the U.S. uses their energy. So you can see that majority of our energy, nuclear, natural gas, coal, petroleum, these are all examples of non-renewable resources. Okay, 93% of the energy that we use in the United States is from non-renewable resources. Only 6.7% is from renewable sources. And this is something we're going to have to seriously look at, because these other sources of energy, because they're not renewable, they eventually will run out. And as they become more and more scarce, they will become more and more expensive, and eventually we're going to have to find other ways of getting our energy. And as that happens, I predict that we'll start to see this piece of the pie growing. Hopefully we will.